She walked into the cafe that afternoon like she wasn't entering, but returning. Something in the way she held herself, the slow ease of her stride, the quiet certainty. It made the world shrink for a second. Even the hum of people talking, the hiss of the espresso machine, seemed to pause. I looked up from my book and forgot to turn the page. She wasn't the kind of woman you simply notice. She was the kind that quietly stays in your mind long after she's gone. The kind who carries time in her eyes. Mid-40s, maybe. Her hair pinned loosely, a few strands framing her face like they refused to follow the rules. She wore a beige coat, half-buttoned, the color soft against her skin. And when she caught me looking, not even long enough to call it staring, she didn't look away. She sat 2 tables across from me, her laptop open, glasses sliding down the bridge of her nose. There was something careful in the way she typed, deliberate, steady, but every few seconds she paused, looked out the window, like she was waiting for something she'd already missed. It should have ended there, a moment between strangers. But the barista called out, "1 caramel latte for Maya," and she smiled, small, distracted, and it felt like the kind of name that could ruin me. When her cup tipped, barely, just a tremble at the edge of the saucer, I reached out before I could think. My fingers brushed hers as I steadied it. "Got it," I said. She looked up, really looked, and for a heartbeat too long, neither of us pulled away. Her hand was warm, not soft, not delicate, but alive. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice low, touched with something I couldn't place. Maybe exhaustion, maybe grace. She returned to her seat. But after that touch, something had shifted. I pretended to read. She pretended not to notice me glancing over. When her eyes lifted from her screen again, they landed exactly where I knew they would. There's a strange gravity between 2 people who shouldn't be anything to each other. Not yet. It hums underneath the air, subtle and reckless. She was older, clearly, but not old in the way years measure, older in the way silence does. The kind of woman who'd seen storms, learned to smile through them, and never once asked for sympathy. And me, I was 26, still learning what to do with all the feelings I didn't have names for. When she stood up to leave, she passed by my table. Her perfume, something faint and warm, like sandalwood and rain, lingered longer than she did. "Sorry," she said, brushing by me as her scarf caught the edge of my chair. "Don't be," I replied, and for some reason, my voice came out softer than I meant. Her smile this time was different, not polite, not distant. It held the smallest trace of recognition, as if she already knew the shape of what was coming. She took a few steps, hesitated at the door, then turned. Our eyes met again, long enough for me to forget what day it was. And then, a man's voice called from behind the counter. "Maya, you forgot your phone." She blinked, caught between leaving and returning. I stood halfway up, not sure why. Maybe to hand it to her, maybe because part of me already didn't want her to go. Her gaze found mine once more, something unspoken flickering there. And then she said quietly, "Maybe I'll see you again." The bell above the cafe door rang softly as she stepped out, and for the first time in years, the room felt too empty to breathe. It had been 3 days since that afternoon in the cafe. 3 days of thinking about a stranger whose voice I'd only heard once. 3 days of walking past the same corner, pretending I had errands nearby. I told myself it wasn't obsession, just coincidence, curiosity maybe. But when she finally appeared again, sunlight catching in her hair like it had been waiting for her, the world clicked into focus in a way I didn't want to admit. She noticed me first this time. Her lips curved, a quiet, knowing smile that reached her eyes but didn't quite stay there. "You again," she said, setting her cup down across from me. "Or am I sitting at your usual table?" "You can sit wherever you want," I replied, and she laughed softly. A laugh that felt like it belonged to a woman who didn't laugh often. I learned her name was Maya. Divorced, lived alone, worked in publishing. She didn't say much else, but her pauses said enough. The kind of pauses that come from being careful with what's left of your heart. When I told her I was a freelance photographer, she tilted her head, studying me as if she were memorizing something. "You look too young to be that serious about anything," she said. "Maybe I just started early," I said. "Or maybe," she murmured, stirring her coffee, "you haven't been hurt yet." Her words settled somewhere deep. She wasn't teasing. She was remembering. Over the next hour, we talked about nothing that mattered and everything that did. Weather, books, regrets neither of us confessed out loud. She brushed her hair back once, and her hand grazed mine. She didn't pull away immediately. There it was again, that quiet charge, like standing too close to something you shouldn't touch but can't help reaching for. When she spoke, her tone carried something almost protective. "You shouldn't waste your time talking to me," she said. "Why not? You're too young to understand people who've stopped expecting things." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's exactly why I should." She exhaled, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. "You have no idea what you're doing." She was right, I didn't. I just knew that every time her gaze met mine, the air felt different. It started to rain outside, light at first, then steady. She stood, hesitated, and then gestured toward the door. "I'll walk you out." Under the narrow awning, we waited for the rain to soften. The world smelled of wet pavement and distant thunder. She reached to brush a raindrop from my cheek. Her hand lingered a second too long. The space between us folded in half. "Maya," I began, but she stepped closer, not quite touching, not quite retreating. "Don't," she whispered, not unkindly. "Just don't make me remember what that feels like." The sound of rain filled the silence that followed, soft, unrelenting, impossible to ignore. And when she finally turned to leave, her fingers grazed mine again. So lightly it felt like a secret neither of us was ready to keep or let go of. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was halfway through a shoot at the old bookshop near the river when she appeared. Same beige coat, sleeves rolled up, fingers trailing absent-mindedly across the spines of books she probably wasn't reading. She hadn't seen me yet. For a moment, I just watched. The quiet precision of her movements, the way her thumb paused on each title like she was searching for a memory instead of a story. When she finally noticed me, her face softened. And then, just as quickly, she hid the softness behind a polite smile. "You following me now?" she teased. "Only if my camera counts," I said, holding it up like proof. She shook her head. "You should be careful. People will talk. Let them." Her eyes flickered at that. Something caught between warning and wanting. I took a slow step closer. "Unless you care what they say." "I don't," she said too quickly, then added, "I just don't want you to." We drifted through aisles, never too far apart, never close enough. Felt like gravity, subtle, inevitable. Every time she leaned forward, her hair brushed against my shoulder. Every time I reached for a book, her hand almost met mine. She stopped at the end of a narrow row, where the light from the window made dust glow like falling stars. "Do you ever photograph people?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said, "but only the ones who don't know how much they're hiding." She turned toward me, half smiling. "And what do you think I'm hiding?" The question lingered in the air, too quiet to answer. Then her phone buzzed. A man's name flashed briefly across the screen. Daniel. Her hand trembled as she silenced it. "Ex-husband?" I asked before I could stop myself. She looked away. "Something like that." There was a pause, long, fragile, dangerous. "He still calls," she said, "when he remembers I exist." I didn't know what to say, but I reached out, touched her arm lightly. She didn't move away this time. A voice echoed from the next aisle, a woman calling her name. "Maya? Is that you?" Maya froze. Her hand slipped from mine. It was someone from work. I could tell by her tone, the professional warmth in it. Maya turned slightly, composing herself in one breath. "Hi, just browsing," she said, forcing a smile. I stood still, heart pounding, pretending to study a book I couldn't even see. When her friend finally left, Maya leaned against the shelf, exhaling hard. "That can't happen again," she whispered. "What can't?" "This. Whatever this is." I nodded, but neither of us moved. Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time, she didn't look away. I could feel her breath. Steady, unsure, close enough to blur the lines between right and wrong. Maya? I started, but she pressed a finger to her lips, her hand trembling just slightly. I know, she said. Don't say it. Outside, rain began again, soft and familiar. And even as we both stepped back, the air between us refused to break. The storm that night felt personal. Wind against the glass, thunder rolling too close, like the world was warning me to stop. But I didn't. Maya had texted earlier, "You still awake?" And 20 minutes later, I was standing outside her apartment building, rain clinging to my jacket, heart refusing to slow down. She opened the door before I knocked. No words, just the sight of her, hair loose, sweatshirt slipping off one shoulder, eyes that looked nothing like the ones she wore in daylight. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know. Then why are you?" "I don't know how not to be." Her breath caught. A small, fragile sound. She stepped aside and I entered. Her apartment was warm, too warm. The lights were dim, one lamp glowing like a secret. The smell of tea and rain mixed in the air. "I wasn't expecting you to actually come," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "You asked if I was awake. That wasn't an invitation. I came anyway." Her lips parted, not in surprise, but in surrender. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. Pulsed. She moved closer, barefoot, hesitant but unafraid. I could see the faint tremor in her hands, the quiet argument she was having with herself. "You don't understand what this means," she whispered. "I'm not who you think I am." "I don't need to think," I said. "I'm standing right here." She smiled barely. "You say that like it's simple. It feels simple when I'm near you." And then, finally, she stopped pretending not to want the same thing. She reached out first, fingers brushing my sleeve, then my wrist. I felt her pulse under my skin, quick and uneven. I stepped closer until there was nothing left between us but air that trembled with restraint. Her gaze lifted, caught mine. Hearts in the same rhythm. Breath shared. "Maya." Her name barely made it out of me before she closed the distance. Almost. Her forehead rested against mine, her hand rising to trace the side of my face. The contact was tender, unsure. The kind that ruins people not with passion, but with truth. "This isn't fair," she whispered, her voice trembling now. "Then stop me." She didn't. Instead, she laughed. A quiet, broken sound, and whispered, "You make me forget how to breathe." Then came the sound, sharp, uninvited. A phone ringing on the counter. The name Daniel glowing on the screen again. Maya froze, eyes darting toward it, then back to me. The moment cracked. I could feel her heartbeat against mine. Faster now, not from closeness but panic. Her hand slipped from my face. "I can't do this," she said. But her voice betrayed her, softer than resolve, heavy with everything unspoken. Before I could answer, she turned away, fingers trembling as she silenced the call, and left the room without looking back. The door to the hallway clicked shut, and I stood there, soaked, shaking, still feeling her warmth on my skin, knowing nothing between us could ever go back to what it was. I didn't see her for 5 days. Not at the cafe. Not walking down the street with her scarf tucked under her chin. Not anywhere. 5 days was long enough for everything to start feeling unreal. Like maybe I'd imagined her warmth, her laugh, the near touch that still lived on my skin. Then one evening, she called. No hello. No small talk. Just her voice, lower than usual. "Can you come?" There was no question in it. Just need. When I reached her place, the lights were off except for the one by the window. She was sitting there, barefoot again, knees drawn up like she'd been waiting too long to move. "You didn't answer my messages," I said. I didn't know what to say. "Then why now?" She looked at me, and there it was again, that storm she carried behind her calm. "Because I can't keep pretending nothing's happening." She stood and crossed the room, her movements sharper this time. "You think this is easy for me?" You think I don't know how this looks? I don't care how it looks. Well, I do, she snapped, then instantly softened, pressing a hand to her temple. I'm sorry. What is it? She hesitated. Her eyes shifted toward the counter. The phone lay there, not hers. I frowned. Whose is that? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she went to pick it up, turned it in her hand, and whispered, "He came here yesterday. Daniel." She nodded. "He still has keys. Said he wanted to talk. About us." "Us," I said, the word catching in my throat. "He knows," she whispered. "He saw us that day at the bookstore." The silence that followed was thick, the kind that changes the air itself. I stepped closer. "And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to scare you away. Or did you just want to keep control?" Her breath hitched, but she didn't move. I could see it, the flicker of guilt, the flicker of something else. Fear. "Maya," I said quietly, "are you afraid of him?" "No," she said too quickly. "Not him. Of this. Of you." She was shaking now, not visibly, but in the small ways people shake when they're trying not to fall apart. When I reached for her, she didn't resist. My hand brushed against her wrist, then slid to her palm. Her fingers closed around mine like she was holding onto something slipping away. "You could leave," she whispered. "You should." "I don't want to." Her eyes met mine, wide and wet. "Then don't blame me when you can't anymore." She stepped closer, almost against her own will, her body trembling with the weight of a truth neither of us could unhear. For a moment I thought she might kiss me, not out of passion but desperation. Instead, she leaned in just enough to whisper, her lips barely brushing my ear, "He's coming back tonight." The sound of rain began again outside, as if echoing the first day we met. She turned toward the door, voice steady but her hands unsteady. "You need to go. Please." I didn't move. "Maya." Her eyes hardened with something that looked a lot like fear. "If you stay, everything changes." I took one step forward anyway, and she didn't step back. When I returned, it wasn't because I should have. It was because I couldn't stay away. The street outside her apartment glowed with rain. Again, always rain. It was as if the sky had memorized us. The same rhythm, the same ache. Her door was half open, light spilling out onto the landing. I knocked anyway. Maya appeared, wrapped in a robe, her hair damp, eyes wide with something that wasn't surprise, just inevitability. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know." "Then why are you?" I stepped closer, water dripping from my sleeve. "Because I'd rather regret this than regret leaving." She didn't move as I entered. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of rain against the windows. Her breathing was uneven, the kind of uneven that comes from holding too much in for too long. "You said he was coming back," I murmured. "He did," she said. "He left." The words landed somewhere between confession and surrender. I nodded slowly. "And what about me? Do I leave too?" She looked at me then, really looked, and something inside her seemed to give way. "You don't know what this would cost," she said. "Maybe not. But I know what it costs to keep pretending." The distance between us disappeared, one heartbeat at a time. Her hand brushed against my chest, stopping halfway as if reconsidering, but it stayed there, trembling slightly through the thin fabric. "Every time you look at me like that," she whispered, "I forget how wrong this is. And every time you look away," I said, "I remember how right it feels." Her laugh was soft and breaking. "You sound so sure of things I spent half my life running from. Then stop running." Her body shifted closer, the scent of her hair filling the space between us. I could feel her breath, the warmth of it trembling against my neck. My hand rose, almost on instinct, brushing a stray strand from her face. She closed her eyes, leaning into the touch, not for comfort, but for honesty. "Maya," I said, my voice low, uncertain, "you can tell me to leave. I'll go if you do." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for my hand, guiding it to her cheek. Her skin was warm, too warm, and beneath it, I could feel the heartbeat she'd been trying to hide. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "Then we'll make it together." For a long, suspended second, neither of us moved. The air thickened, the world outside dissolving into nothing but rain and silence. Then, slowly, she leaned forward. Not a kiss, not yet, just her forehead against mine, her breath mingling with mine until there was no space left to think. "I hate that you make me feel alive again," she said softly. "I hate that you make me afraid to stop," I replied. When she finally stepped back, the silence between us wasn't tense anymore. It was full. She exhaled, shaky but clear. "Whatever happens after this," she said, "we can't pretend it didn't mean something." I nodded. "Then let's not." Outside, the storm quieted. Inside, everything finally made sense. Not clean, not easy, but real. They say love is about timing. But sometimes it's just about choosing to stay, even when time itself tells you not to. The next morning, the rain had stopped. For the first time in days, sunlight reached through the windows, soft, hesitant, like even it wasn't sure if it was welcome here. Maya sat on the couch, a cup of tea warming her hands. Her robe was replaced by a simple sweater, hair tied up loosely. She looked peaceful, but the kind of peace that comes after a storm, fragile, earned. I stood by the window, watching the quiet city breathe again. Neither of us spoke for a while. It wasn't the silence of discomfort anymore. It was the silence that comes when everything has finally been said, even without words. "Last night," she began, then stopped. I turned toward her. "You don't have to explain. I know. She sighed softly, smiling to herself. "It's been a long time since someone made me forget how careful I've become."
He walked closer, sat beside her.
"You don't always have to be careful." She looked at me then, really looked, and there it was again, that warmth she tried to hide behind composure. "You're still too young to understand what it costs to feel this much," she said. "Maybe," I admitted, "but I'd rather feel it than miss it." Her laugh was quiet, almost shy. "You always know what to say, don't you?" "Only when I'm scared of losing the moment," I said. She reached for my hand, slowly, as if testing the idea of being allowed to again. Her fingers slid into mine, fitting like they had always been waiting for the chance. "No ruse, no fear, just closeness. You realize this doesn't make life easier for either of us," she said. "I don't want easy," I replied. "I just want real." Her eyes softened. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." We sat there for a long while, the world outside beginning to glow again. The tea went cold between her palms. My shoulder brushed hers, and she leaned in slightly, just enough to rest her head against me. I could feel her exhale, slow and deep, like the kind of breath someone takes when they finally stop running. When she finally spoke again, her voice was gentle. "I used to think love was something that belonged to the young, that it had an expiration date." I smiled. "Then maybe we're proving time wrong." She turned toward me, eyes bright with something calm and certain. "Or maybe love just shows up when you're finally ready to stop fighting it." I leaned forward, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Not hungry, not desperate, but honest. Her fingers tightened around mine. "Stay," she whispered. I wasn't planning on leaving. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware, unbothered, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But inside, two people sat close enough to silence their doubts, the air warm with quiet belonging. Sometimes love doesn't need promises or perfect timing. Sometimes it just needs two people brave enough to stay when it would be easier to walk away. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?